The message arrived on a Tuesday morning when Captain Jake Morrison was drinking his third cup of coffee and reviewing patrol reports from the outer colonies. The communication came through official channels with encryption codes he had never seen before, bearing the seal of Earth Command and marked with priority levels that made his coffee go cold. Jake read the message 3 times before he believed what he was seeing. The Galactic Federation had sent humanity an invitation, not just any invitation but the first formal welcome for Earth to join the cosmic community that humanity had been dreaming about since they first looked up at the stars and wondered if anyone else was out there. The Federation wanted to see what humanity could bring to the table. They were hosting something called a fleet review at the Kepler 442 system, where every member species would demonstrate their military capabilities and technological achievements. It was tradition, the message explained, for new species to show their strength and earn respect among the established powers of the galaxy. Jake set down his coffee cup and called up the mission parameters on his terminal. What he saw there made him blink hard and read again. Earth was sending 1 ship to this demonstration. 1 ship out of the entire human fleet. 1 ship to represent all of humanity, before alien civilizations that had been traveling between stars for thousands of years. That 1 ship was his. The UES Defiant was humanity's newest vessel, fresh from the shipyards orbiting Mars and packed with experimental technology that most of the crew was still learning to use. She was beautiful in the way that human warships were beautiful. All clean lines and efficient design, built for speed and hitting power rather than the ceremonial grandeur that Jake imagined alien vessels might favor. But she was still just 1 ship. Jake walked down to the command deck where his senior officers were already gathering for the morning briefing. Lieutenant Amy Chen looked up from her communications console with the same confused expression that Jake figured was probably on his own face. "Sir, we're getting inquiries from every major news network in the system," Amy reported. "They want to know if Earth Command made some kind of mistake with the fleet assignments for the Federation review." Commander Rick Hayes, the ship's tactical officer, was running diagnostics on their weapon systems for what Jake knew was probably the 10th time that morning. Rick was the kind of officer who checked everything twice and then checked it again, which was exactly the kind of person Jake wanted handling their guns when they were about to meet alien civilizations for the first time. "Captain, all weapon systems are green," Rick reported. "Rail guns are charged and ready, plasma torpedo tubes are loaded, and the experimental quantum disruption array is showing optimal power levels. But sir, if you don't mind me asking, what exactly are we supposed to accomplish out there with just us?" That was the question everyone was asking, and Jake didn't have a good answer. He had requested clarification from Earth Command twice, and both times he had received the same response. "Demonstrate human military doctrine and capabilities to the fullest extent. Show them what humanity brings to the galaxy. Make Earth proud." Commander Sarah Blake, their chief engineer, emerged from the lower decks with grease on her hands and a worried expression on her face. Sarah could make their engines sing and had already improved the efficiency of their experimental systems by 15% since they left Earth. But even she couldn't make 1 ship into a fleet. "Captain, I've been running calculations on our power output compared to what we might be facing out there," Sarah said. "If the other species are bringing hundreds of ships like the briefing materials suggested, we're going to look like a shuttlecraft next to a dreadnought." Jake understood their concerns because he shared them. Every piece of intelligence they had about other Federation species suggested that they built big and brought everything they had to demonstrations like this. The crystalline ships of the Zalari hegemony were reported to be massive constructs that could be seen from orbit. The biovessels of the Korath grew to enormous sizes and traveled in swarms. Even the peaceful Thylorian Republic apparently built their medical frigates to be 3 times the size of human destroyers, and Earth was sending the Defiant Admiral. Lisa Parker had been equally puzzled when Jake had spoken with her before departure. Lisa commanded Earth's defensive fleet and had overseen the construction of humanity's first generation of interstellar warships. She understood military doctrine better than anyone in the solar system, and even she couldn't explain Earth Command's decision. "Jake, I've been in 3 wars and commanded fleets in battles that saved colonies," Lisa had told him during their final briefing. "I know what 1 ship can do, and I know what 1 ship can't do. If this is some kind of test from Earth Command, I don't understand what they're trying to prove." The journey to Kepler 442 would take 3 weeks through hyperspace, and Jake spent most of that time trying to prepare his crew for whatever they would find when they arrived. The Defiant carried 200 of humanity's finest, men and women who had trained for years to represent Earth among the stars. They deserved to know what they were walking into. Lieutenant Tom Kelly commanded their fighter squadron, 20 pilots flying the most advanced combat craft humanity had ever built. Tom had been asking the same questions as everyone else, wondering how 20 fighters and 1 ship were supposed to make an impression on alien civilizations that had been perfecting warfare for millennia. During their second week in hyperspace, Jake called a ship-wide meeting in the main hangar bay. 200 faces looked up at him, all of them showing the same mixture of excitement and concern that he felt every time he thought about their mission. "I know you all have questions about what we're doing out here," Jake began. "I know you're wondering why Earth sent just us instead of a proper fleet. I know you're concerned about representing humanity with just 1 ship against civilizations that have been traveling space since before humans invented writing." The hangar was completely silent. Jake could see Rick checking his tactical displays even during the meeting, and Sarah monitoring their experimental systems from a portable terminal. Amy had a communications headset around her neck, ready to handle any incoming transmissions. Tom's pilots sat together, their flight suits bearing the patches of a dozen different Earth nations, united now under the banner of humanity's first interstellar fleet. "The truth is, I don't know why Earth Command made this decision," Jake continued. "I don't know what they expect us to accomplish that 100 ships couldn't do better. But I know this crew and I know this ship, and I know that whatever we find out there, we'll handle it the way humans always handle things. We'll adapt, we'll overcome, and we'll show the galaxy what Earth is made of." Jake looked around at the faces of his crew, seeing determination replacing doubt in their expressions. These were the men and women who had volunteered to leave Earth behind and venture into the unknown. They were explorers and warriors, scientists and engineers, all of them united by the dream of taking humanity to the stars. "In 1 week, we'll drop out of hyperspace in a system full of alien ships," Jake said. "We'll be outnumbered by thousands to 1. We'll be facing technologies we don't understand and species we've never met. And we'll do it as representatives of every human who ever looked up at the night sky and wondered what was out there." The crew began to disperse after the meeting, but Jake noticed that the worried expressions had been replaced by something else. His people were still concerned about the mission, but now they were also excited. They were beginning to understand that they weren't just crew members on a routine diplomatic mission. They were making history. As the Defiant continued its journey toward Kepler 442, Jake spent his time reviewing everything they knew about Federation military traditions and alien combat capabilities. The more he learned, the more confused he became about Earth's decision to send only 1 ship. Every precedent suggested that new species brought their most impressive fleets to demonstrate their power and earn respect. But as they approached their destination, Jake began to suspect that maybe Earth Command knew something about this mission that they hadn't shared with him. Maybe there was a reason they had chosen the Defiant specifically, with her experimental weapons and her crew of humans who had been training for combat since before they could walk. Maybe Earth wasn't trying to impress the galaxy with numbers or size or technological superiority. Maybe they were planning to impress them with something else, entirely, something that 1 human ship could demonstrate better than 1,000 alien vessels, something that the galaxy was about to learn about humanity, whether they were ready for it or not. The first thing Jake Morrison noticed when the Defiant dropped out of hyperspace was the light. Thousands of alien vessels reflected the orange glow of Kepler 442, creating a spectacular display that stretched across space like a jewelry collection scattered across black velvet. The second thing he noticed was that every single one of those ships was bigger than... His Amy Chen's communications console immediately lit up with incoming transmissions as alien sensors detected their arrival. The babble of languages and frequencies that poured through their systems was overwhelming. Even with the universal translators working at full capacity to sort through the different species attempting to contact them. "Captain, I'm receiving welcome messages from 237 different vessels," Amy reported. Her voice slightly strained as she tried to keep up with the flood of communications. "Most of them seem confused about our fleet size. Several are asking if we're a scout ship for the main human armada. Jake studied the tactical display that Rick Hayes had brought up on the main screen. The alien vessels were arranged in perfect formations according to species, each group displaying their ships in patterns that seemed designed to showcase their power and technological sophistication. The crystalline vessels of the Zalari hegemony caught the starlight and threw it back in rainbow patterns that were beautiful enough to make him forget these were warships. Each Zalari vessel was at least 3 times the size of the Defiant, and Jake counted over 40 of them arranged in a geometric pattern that hurt his eyes to look at directly. The bioships of the Korath swarm moved through space like living creatures, their hulls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that seemed to communicate with each other in a language of light and color. Jake had read about these ships in the briefing materials, but seeing them in person was something else entirely. They writhed and flexed as they moved, more like sea creatures than spacecraft, and some of them were large enough to swallow the Defiant whole. The Gorvak Empire had brought a formation of 300 dreadnoughts that looked like they had been carved from solid metal and designed by someone who believed that bigger was always better. Each Gorvak ship bristled with weapon emplacements and armor plating, thick enough to stop anything humanity had ever built. They moved in perfect military precision, maintaining exact distances and formations that spoke of centuries of military tradition. Even the peaceful species had brought impressive displays. The Thylorian Republic's medical frigates were gleaming white vessels equipped with hospital facilities and defensive systems, each one carrying enough medical supplies to treat the population of a small planet. The Axiom Collective had brought geometric ships that seemed to exist in more dimensions than Jake's eyes could properly process, their surfaces shifting and changing in ways that made his head ache. "Sir," Rick Hayes called from his tactical station, "I'm reading over 2,000 vessels in this system. Most formations have between 30 and 60 ships. The largest group belongs to the Hegemonic Assembly with 120 vessels. The smallest groups still have at least 15 ships." Jake felt a cold knot forming in his stomach as the reality of their situation became clear. Earth had sent 1 ship to a gathering where the smallest delegations had brought 15. They weren't just outnumbered. They were completely outclassed in terms of raw numbers and apparent firepower. Sarah Blake emerged from the engineering section with a data pad in her hands and a concerned expression on her face. "Captain, I've been analyzing the energy signatures from the alien vessels. Some of these ships are putting out power readings that are off our scale. The Zalari constructs alone are generating more energy than our entire home fleet combined." The Defiant's arrival had clearly caused some stir among the alien formations. Jake could see ships turning to get better sensor readings on the human vessel, and Amy's communications board was lighting up with more inquiries by the minute. "Captain," Amy said, "I'm getting a direct communication from Fleet Admiral Kevin Torres. He's the organizing committee's liaison for new species integration." Jake straightened his uniform and nodded to Amy to put the call through. The main screen flickered and resolved into the image of an alien that looked vaguely reptilian, with scales that shifted color as he spoke, and eyes that seemed to hold genuine kindness. "Captain Morrison, welcome to the Kepler 442 Fleet Review," Admiral Torres said, his voice carrying through the translation system with only slight electronic distortion. "We're honored to have humanity join us for this historic gathering. I must admit, however, that we're somewhat puzzled by your fleet composition. Are you perhaps the advanced scout for your main battle group?" Jake felt every eye on the bridge turn toward him. This was the moment he had been dreading since they left Earth, when he would have to explain something he didn't understand himself. "Admiral Torres, I am Captain Jake Morrison of the UES Defiant, representing Earth and humanity at this gathering. We are the human delegation to your fleet review." There was a long pause as Admiral Torres processed this information. Jake could see the alien's scales shift to what he guessed might be colors of confusion or concern. "Captain Morrison, I want to make sure I understand correctly. The vessel you command is the entirety of humanity's presence at this review? There are no additional ships en route or holding position elsewhere in the system?" "That is correct, Admiral. The Defiant represents Earth's contribution to this gathering." Another pause, longer this time, and Jake could see Admiral Torres consulting with other figures who appeared at the edges of the communication screen. When the Admiral returned his attention to the conversation, his expression had changed to something Jake couldn't quite read. "Captain, I must inform you that this is highly unusual. Most species bring significant portions of their naval forces to demonstrate their capabilities, and earn appropriate status within the Federation hierarchy. The review is designed to assess military strength, technological advancement, and fleet coordination abilities. I'm not certain how a single vessel, however advanced, can adequately represent these qualities. Jake had been expecting this conversation, but hearing it stated so directly still made him feel like he was failing his mission before it had even begun. Around the bridge, he could see his crew working to maintain professional composure while listening to their captain being told that humanity had fundamentally misunderstood the assignment. Admiral, we understand the traditional format of these reviews. Earth Command has provided us with specific instructions to demonstrate human military capabilities to the fullest extent possible. We are prepared to participate in whatever demonstrations or exercises you have planned. Admiral Torres consulted again with his advisors before responding. Very well, Captain Morrison. We've allocated you a position with the other minor powers and recently spacefaring species. Your demonstration window is scheduled for tomorrow at 800 hours. We've prepared asteroid targets and several disabled drone vessels for weapons testing. I hope you understand that given your limited fleet size, we cannot offer you the same status or position as the major powers, but we welcome your participation nonetheless. The communication ended, leaving the bridge of the Defiant in uncomfortable silence. Jake could feel the weight of representing his entire species pressing down on him as he looked at the massive alien fleet surrounding them. Well, Rick Hayes said finally, at least they're not asking us to leave. Sarah Blake was studying her readings again, her engineering mind clearly working on something. Captain, there's something odd about these formations. I'm detecting massive subspace distortions throughout the system, but they don't match any of the ships we can see. It's like there's something else out there, something we're not detecting properly. Amy Chen looked up from her communication station with a puzzled expression. Sir, I'm also picking up some strange readings. There are transmission patterns in the background noise that don't match any of the known Federation communication protocols. It could be natural phenomena, but the patterns seem too regular. Jake filed these observations away in his mind while he considered their situation. Tomorrow they would have to demonstrate human military capabilities to an audience of alien civilizations who already considered them a minor power based solely on their fleet size. They would be performing for species who had been perfecting warfare and space travel for thousands of years, using weapons and tactics that humanity could barely comprehend. But as Jake looked around at his crew, he saw something that gave him hope. These were the same people who had volunteered to leave Earth and venture into the unknown. They were adaptable, resourceful, and completely committed to their mission. They might not have the massive fleets or ancient technologies of the alien civilizations around them, but they had something else. They had the human approach to problem solving, which had always been to find a way to win regardless of the odds. Tomorrow, the galaxy would see what that approach looked like when applied to warfare among the stars. Jake just hoped they were ready for what they were about to learn about humanity. Jake Morrison was reviewing their demonstration plan one final time when the universe exploded into chaos around them. At exactly 0752 hours, 8 minutes before their scheduled weapons testing, space itself seemed to tear open as hundreds of black ships materialized from what everyone had thought was empty. Void, the asteroid field that had been designated as their target practice area, revealed itself to be something far more sinister. Massive vessels with hulls that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it emerged from cloaking fields so advanced that even the most sophisticated alien sensors had failed to detect them. These were not Federation ships, and they were not here for peaceful demonstrations. Amy Chen's communications console erupted in alarms as distress signals flooded every frequency. Captain, I'm reading 500-plus hostile contacts decloaking throughout the system. They're broadcasting on Void Syndicate frequencies and demanding immediate surrender of all Federation vessels. The Void Syndicate, Jake had read about them in the intelligence briefings, a collection of slavers, pirates, and genocidal fanatics that the galaxy had been hunting for decades. They were known for hit-and-run attacks on isolated colonies and merchant vessels, but this was something entirely different. This was a trap designed to capture or destroy the military leadership of every major civilization in the galaxy. Rick Hayes was already at his tactical station, his fingers dancing across the controls as he brought their weapons online. Sir, hostile vessels are opening fire on the Federation fleets. The alien formations are caught completely off guard. They're trying to reorganize from parade formations into combat positions, but they're taking heavy casualties. Jake watched in horror as the beautiful crystalline ships of the Zalari began to shatter under dark energy bombardment that turned their light-refracting hulls into clouds of glittering debris. The bioships of the Korath writhed in agony as viral weapons corrupted their living hulls, turning their own biology against them. Even the massive Gorvak dreadnoughts, with all their armor and weapons, were struggling against enemies that fought with technologies designed specifically to kill. Sarah Blake's voice came over the intercom from engineering. "Captain, I'm reading massive energy spikes from the hostile fleet. These aren't random pirates, sir. This is a coordinated military operation using weapons and tactics, specifically designed to counter Federation defense systems." The Syndicate ships moved, with a precision that spoke of careful planning and extensive intelligence gathering. They had studied every Federation species, learned their weaknesses, and prepared weapons designed to exploit those vulnerabilities. The peaceful Thylorian medical frigates found their defensive shields useless against weapons that specifically targeted their healing technologies. The geometric vessels of the Axiom Collective discovered that their dimensional manipulation abilities meant nothing against attackers who could predict and counter their movements. Lieutenant Tom Kelly's voice crackled over the communications system from the fighter bay. "Captain, request permission to launch. My pilots are ready to engage, but we need orders now." Jake felt the weight of command settle on his shoulders as he realized that in the space of minutes, what should have been a peaceful demonstration had become the largest space battle in galactic history. Around them, 2,000 alien vessels were fighting for their lives against an enemy that had prepared for this moment for years. "All hands, battle stations," Jake commanded, his voice cutting through the chaos on the bridge. "Chen, get me a tactical network with any surviving Federation commanders. Flake, I need everything our engines can give us. Hayes, weapons free and target anything that's shooting at Federation ships." The Defiant surged forward as Sarah pushed their engines beyond normal limits, diving into the battle with a speed and aggressiveness that caught both sides by surprise. Jake had spent years studying human military history, and one lesson came through clearly. When outnumbered and outgunned, the only option was to attack. "Hayes, target that Syndicate cruiser that's firing on the Gorvak formation. Full spread of plasma torpedoes. Then follow up with railgun fire." The Defiant's weapons spoke with the voice of human engineering and human tactics. Their railguns fired projectiles at relativistic speeds that punched through Syndicate shields like they were paper. The plasma torpedoes detonated in coordinated patterns that created cascading explosions among the tightly grouped enemy vessels. Amy Chen was coordinating with the surviving alien commanders, but the reports she was receiving painted a grim picture. "Captain, the Federation fleets are in complete disarray. Admiral Torres reports that 70% of the Zalari formation has been destroyed. The Korath swarm leader says their bioships are being systematically infected and turned against each other. Even the Gorvak Empire is requesting assistance." Jake studied the tactical display as Rick updated their targeting information. The Syndicate had clearly planned this attack for months or years, positioning their cloaked fleet in the asteroid field and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. They had intelligence on every Federation species, weapons designed to counter specific alien technologies, and tactics that exploited the peaceful nature of civilizations that had rarely experienced true warfare. But they had not planned for humanity. "Chen, patch me through to all Federation vessels on emergency frequencies," Jake ordered. "Broadcast this message on all channels." Jake took a deep breath as he prepared to address alien commanders who had never heard of humanity until yesterday and were now watching their fleets being destroyed by an enemy they had never imagined could threaten them. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of Earth Vessel UES Defiant to all Federation forces. We are engaging hostile targets and request immediate tactical coordination. Any ship that can fight, form up on our position. We're going to show these pirates what happens when they threaten peaceful civilizations." The response was immediate and desperate. Admiral Torres, broadcasting from his damaged command ship, replied first. "Captain Morrison, we accept your offer of assistance, but you must understand the situation. We are facing an enemy that has prepared specifically to counter our technologies and tactics. Our ships were designed for exploration and peaceful demonstration, not warfare against opponents like this." Rick Hayes had identified several priority targets among the Syndicate fleet and was already engaging them with systematic precision. "Sir, I'm tracking their command vessels. The ones with the extended sensor arrays appear to be coordinating their attack patterns. If we can disrupt their communications network, it might give the Federation fleets time to reorganize. Jake nodded and opened the tactical channel to share their targeting data with any alien ships that could receive it. All Federation vessels, this is Defiant. We're transmitting targeting information on Syndicate command and control ships. Focus your fire on vessels with large sensor arrays and communication equipment. The concept of targeting enemy command structures was apparently revolutionary to species that viewed warfare as a formal engagement between equals. Jake watched as several Gorvak dreadnoughts began following the Defiant's targeting suggestions and immediately began having more success against their attackers. Tom Kelly and his fighter squadron launched into the chaos with human tactics that no alien pilot had ever seen before. Instead of flying in formation and engaging in formal combat maneuvers, they used the debris and explosion patterns to mask their approach, struck at vulnerable points on enemy ships, and coordinated their attacks with the larger vessels in real time. Control, this is Eagle Leader. Tom's voice came through the communication system. We've identified what looks like their flagship hiding behind the large asteroid. It's coordinating the attack on the Thylorian medical ships. Request permission to paint it with targeting lasers for a coordinated strike. Sarah, Blake's engineering modifications were proving their worth as the Defiant's experimental systems adapted to combat use in ways their designers had never imagined. Captain, I can reconfigure our quantum disruption array to create gravitational anomalies. It should pull their ships out of formation and disrupt their attack patterns. As the battle raged around them, Jake began to understand something that the alien civilizations were learning at terrible cost. The Syndicate had prepared for this attack by studying Federation technologies and tactics, but they had based their preparations on species that had achieved spaceflight through cooperation and peaceful development. They had never encountered a species that had learned warfare through thousands of years of constant conflict, that viewed combat not as a regrettable necessity but as a science to be perfected. They had never faced opponents who could adapt their tactics in real time, who could turn disadvantages into advantages, and who could coordinate complex operations under fire. They had never fought humans. The Defiant continued its attack run through the Syndicate formation, its weapons carving through enemy ships while its crew coordinated with alien allies who were learning human tactics in the middle of the largest battle of their lives. Around them, the galaxy was discovering that peaceful civilizations needed guardians, and that sometimes those guardians came from the most unexpected places. The Syndicate had planned the perfect trap to destroy the military leadership. The battle had been raging for 2 hours when Jake Morrison realized that the galaxy was watching humanity fight a war unlike anything they had ever seen before. The Defiant carved through Syndicate formations with a precision and aggression that seemed to violate every rule of civilized combat, while around them alien commanders struggled to understand tactics that made no sense to species raised on cooperation and formal military traditions. Rick Hayes had turned their weapon systems into instruments of surgical destruction, targeting enemy ships with a methodology that treated warfare like a science rather than an art. Captain, I've identified 17 command vessels in their fleet. If we can eliminate their coordination network, their attack formations will collapse into individual ship actions. The concept of systematic command targeting was spreading through the surviving Federation forces as alien commanders watched the Defiant's approach to combat. Admiral Gorthak of the Gorvak Empire, his massive dreadnought scarred but still fighting, opened a communication channel that crackled with weapons fire and explosion echoes. Captain Morrison, your targeting strategies are producing results we have never achieved against Syndicate forces. How do you identify which vessels control their operations so quickly? Jake switched to a general communication frequency so that all surviving Federation ships could hear his response. Admiral Gorthak, watch their movement patterns. The ships that adjust position after others are destroyed are giving orders. The ships that maintain complex sensor sweeps while fighting are gathering intelligence. Target the ones that other ships protect, not the ones that protect others. This reversal of traditional defensive thinking rippled through the alien fleets like a revelation. Species that had spent centuries learning to protect their most valuable assets suddenly understood that sometimes the most valuable targets were the ones being protected rather than the ones doing the protecting. Sarah Blake's voice echoed through the ship's communication system as she worked miracles with their experimental technology. Captain, I've modified our quantum disruption array to create localized gravitational distortions. I can pull enemy ships out of formation or slam them together if they group too tightly. The first test of Sarah's modification came when a formation of 12 syndicate destroyers tried to coordinate an attack on a damaged Thylorian medical frigate. The Defiance quantum array created a gravitational anomaly that pulled the enemy ships into a tight cluster, where Rick's plasma torpedoes detonated among them like flowers of destruction, eliminating the entire formation in seconds. Tom Kelly's fighter squadron had become a masterclass in adaptive combat tactics that alien pilots were trying desperately to understand and copy. Control, this is Eagle Leader. We're using the Syndicate's own debris field against them. When their ships explode, we're flying through the wreckage to mask our approach on their next targets. The alien fighters that survived their initial encounters with Syndicate forces began following Tom's lead, learning to use the chaos of battle as a weapon rather than an obstacle. Zalari crystal fighters that had initially flown in perfect geometric formations started breaking pattern to use asteroid cover. Korath biofighters began coordinating with the debris clouds to hide their bioluminescent signatures. Amy Chen was coordinating communications between over 40 different alien commanders, creating a tactical network that allowed real-time information sharing between species that had never fought together before. Captain, the Axiom Collective reports they can predict Syndicate movement patterns if we can provide them with targeting data from our sensors. The Thylorians want to coordinate their medical ship's defensive systems with our attack runs. Jake approved both requests while studying the overall battle situation on his tactical display. The Syndicate had started with overwhelming advantages in numbers, firepower, and preparation. But human tactical doctrine was spreading through the Federation forces like wildfire. Alien commanders who had never considered aggressive maneuvering were learning to attack rather than defend, to adapt rather than maintain formation, to improvise rather than follow predetermined strategies. The turning point came when Jake made a decision that no alien commander would have considered. Instead of continuing to fight defensively in the outer system, he ordered the Defiant to attack straight toward the heart of the Syndicate fleet. All ahead full, Jake commanded. Blake, give me every bit of power the engines can handle. Hayes, prepare for close-range combat. We're going hunting. Admiral Torres, monitoring the human ship's movements from his damaged command vessel, opened an emergency channel. Captain Morrison, you are flying directly into the center of their battle formation. This appears to be a suicide run that will accomplish nothing except the destruction of your vessel. Jake's response was broadcast on all Federation frequencies, so that every surviving alien could hear humanity's approach to warfare. Admiral Torres, the Syndicate fleet is organized around their command ships in the center of their formation. They expect us to fight on the edges where they can use superior numbers. They don't expect anyone to attack their center because it's the most dangerous place in the battle. But Captain, Admiral Torres replied, it's the most dangerous place precisely because their strongest ships and heaviest weapons are concentrated there. Exactly, Jake said. And the single word contained everything that separated human military thinking from the rest of the galaxy. The Defiant dove through the Syndicate fleet like a spear thrown by an angry god, its weapons firing in all directions as it carved a path toward the enemy command cluster. Rick Hayes had never fired so many weapons so quickly, treating their armament like a surgeon's tools as he dissected enemy formations. Sarah Blake pushed their engines beyond design specifications, while maintaining the quantum array's gravitational disruptions that scattered enemy ships like leaves in a hurricane. The Syndicate forces, designed to fight defensive-minded Federation species, found themselves completely unprepared for an opponent that treated their strongest position as a target, rather than a threat. Their defensive formations became traps when the Defiant flew through them. Their overlapping fields of fire became confused when their target refused to retreat, and their command structure began breaking down when their leaders realized they were fighting an enemy that followed no rules they understood. Captain, Rick called from his tactical station, I've got a lock on their primary command ship. It's a massive vessel, twice the size of anything else in their fleet, hiding behind a screen of smaller ships. Jake smiled with the expression of a predator that had found its prey. Then let's introduce them to human diplomacy. All ships, this is Captain Morrison. We're about to demonstrate why Earth sent only one ship to this gathering. Watch and learn. The Defiant's final attack run toward the Syndicate command ship became a lesson in human warfare, that the galaxy would study for generations. Instead of approaching cautiously or requesting support, the human vessel accelerated toward the most dangerous target in the enemy fleet while broadcasting tactical information to every Federation ship that could receive it. As plasma, torpedoes and railgun rounds carved through the space around the enemy flagship, alien commanders throughout the system began to understand that they were witnessing something unprecedented. They were watching a species that had turned warfare into an art form, that could find opportunity in any situation, and that treated overwhelming odds as interesting challenges rather than insurmountable obstacles. The battle was far from over, but the galaxy was beginning to learn why humanity had sent only one ship. It wasn't because Earth doubted the strength of alien civilizations, or because humans were too arrogant to understand the magnitude of galactic warfare. It was because one human ship, properly used, was enough to change the course of any battle, no matter how hopeless it appeared. The silence that followed the destruction of the Syndicate flagship was unlike anything Jake Morrison had ever experienced in battle. For 6 hours, the Kepler 442 system had echoed with weapons fire, explosions, and the screams of dying ships. But now even the background hum of damaged engines seemed muted as thousands of survivors tried to process what they had witnessed. Debris field that surrounded them told the story of the largest space battle in galactic history. 400 Syndicate vessels drifted as wreckage among the scattered remains of 800 Federation ships, while rescue operations began among the survivors. The Defiant floated in the center of it all, her hull scarred and blackened but intact, as alien commanders struggled to understand how one human ship had turned a massacre into a victory. Amy Chen was coordinating rescue frequencies as damaged ships throughout the system sent out distress calls and requests for assistance. Her communications board showed a complex web of species working together to save lives, many of them cooperating for the first time in their civilization's histories. "Captain," Amy reported, "we're receiving gratitude messages from over 300 surviving vessels. The Thylorian Republic wants to know if we need medical assistance. The Gorvak Empire is offering to share their repair facilities. Even the Axiom Collective is asking if our crew requires anything they can provide." Rick Hayes was running post-battle diagnostics on their weapon systems, his tactical mind already analyzing what they had learned about human combat effectiveness against alien technologies. "Sir, our weapons performed beyond all expectations. The railguns proved effective against every type of shield system we encountered. The plasma torpedoes created chain reactions in enemy formations that multiplied our effective firepower. And the quantum disruption array proved to be the most versatile weapon we've ever deployed." Sarah Blake emerged from the engineering sections with exhaustion written across her face but satisfaction gleaming in her eyes. "Captain, we pushed every system on this ship beyond design limits and everything held together. The modifications we made during the battle are going to revolutionize human ship design. We've proven that our experimental technologies can perform under the worst possible combat conditions." Admiral Torres was the first alien commander to request a formal meeting aboard the Defiant, and Jake agreed immediately. The reptilian officer materialized in their conference room via hologram, his scale still showing the stress patterns that Jake had learned indicated extreme emotional states in his species. "Captain Morrison," Admiral Torres began, "I must start by saying that what your crew accomplished today defies every military theory that Federation tacticians have developed over thousands of years. You faced impossible odds against an enemy that had prepared specifically to counter our technologies and tactics, and you not only survived but achieved total victory." Jake looked around the conference room at his senior officers, seeing the same mixture of pride and exhaustion that he felt himself. They had done something unprecedented, but they were still trying to understand exactly what that meant for humanity's place in the galaxy. "Admiral, we did what humans always do when we're outnumbered and outgunned. We adapted, we improvised, and we found a way to win. We couldn't match the Syndicate's numbers or their preparation, so we changed the rules of engagement until we were fighting the kind of battle we could win." Admiral Torres consulted with figures that appeared at the edges of his holographic projection before continuing. "Captain, that is precisely what we need to understand. How did you change the rules of engagement? How did you teach our commanders tactical concepts that our military academies have never considered? How did one ship coordinate the efforts of dozens of different species who had never fought together before?" The question that Admiral Torres was really asking became clear as other alien commanders joined the holographic conference. Admiral Gorthak of the Gorvak Empire, his massive form bearing fresh honor scars from the battle, spoke with the blunt directness of a warrior who had seen something that challenged everything he thought he knew about warfare. Captain Morrison, the Gorvak Empire has been perfecting military doctrine for over 2,000 years. We have fought in hundreds of conflicts and conquered dozens of star systems. But today we learned tactics from your species that made our previous knowledge seem primitive. We must know how humanity developed such advanced understanding of warfare. Commander Sarah Blake answered before Jake could respond, her engineer's mind cutting straight to the heart of the matter. Admiral Gorthak, humanity didn't develop advanced warfare by conquering other species or fighting occasional conflicts. We developed it by fighting each other constantly for thousands of years. Every human weapon, every tactic, every strategic concept has been tested in actual combat against opponents who were trying to kill us. The silence that followed Sarah's statement stretched across the holographic conference as alien. Commanders absorbed the implications of what she had said. Admiral Torres was the first to speak, his voice carrying a mixture of fascination and horror. Are you saying that your species achieved spaceflight while still engaged in active warfare against each other? Lieutenant Tom Kelly, still wearing his flight suit and bearing the exhaustion of 6 hours of continuous combat flying, provided the answer that would reshape galactic understanding of human nature. Admiral, humans didn't stop fighting each other when we reached space. We just started fighting over bigger territories. Every piece of technology on this ship was designed by people who understood that somewhere in the galaxy, someone else was building weapons specifically intended to kill them. We don't fight occasionally when circumstances require it. We fight constantly because that's how we evolved to survive. Amy Chen brought up historical data on her communication console, displaying information that made the alien commander's expressions shift to what Jake recognized as expressions of disbelief. In the last 1,000 years alone, Amy reported, humanity has fought over 1,500 major conflicts, ranging from planetary civil wars to interstellar resource disputes. Our military doctrine isn't theoretical knowledge passed down through academies. It's practical experience gained by people who learned tactics by using them in real combat situations. Admiral Torres exchanged glances with the other alien commanders before asking the question that Jake had been expecting. Since the battle ended, Captain Morrison, given what we have witnessed today, and what we are learning about human military capabilities, we must ask directly, why did Earth send only one ship to this gathering? Was this some kind of test of our worthiness? Did your leaders doubt our ability to defend ourselves? Jake stood up and walked to the conference room's viewport, looking out at the debris field that had once been the most dangerous pirate fleet in the galaxy. His reflection in the transparent aluminum showed a man who had aged years in the space of one day, but whose eyes held the satisfaction of a job well done. Admiral Torres, Earth didn't send one ship because we doubted your strength or wanted to test your worthiness. We sent one ship because that's all we thought we would need. Every other species in this system brought their most beautiful vessels, their most advanced technologies, their most impressive displays of power. But humans learned something different about warfare over our long history. Jake turned back to face the assembled alien commanders, each representing civilizations that had achieved greatness through cooperation, exploration, and peaceful development. War isn't about having the biggest fleet or the prettiest ships or the most advanced technology. War is about being willing to do what your enemy won't do, to go where your enemy won't go, and to pay prices your enemy won't pay. It's about adaptation, aggression, and the absolute refusal to give up regardless of the odds. Commander Rick Hayes added the final piece of explanation that would answer the galaxy's question forever. The Syndicate spent years preparing to fight. Federation species who approach warfare as a formal engagement between civilized opponents. They never prepared to fight a species that views warfare as a survival skill that every individual must master. They brought 500 ships to fight 2,000 Federation vessels. But they only needed to defeat one human ship, and they never understood that until it was too late. The holographic conference ended with alien commanders who finally understood why humanity had sent only one ship to represent Earth at the greatest military gathering in galactic history. The answer wasn't arrogance or ignorance or some kind of test. The answer was that one human ship, crewed by people who had been learning warfare since before they could walk, was exactly the right amount of force needed to solve any problem the galaxy could present. In the days that followed, as rescue operations continued and the survivors returned to their homeworlds, The story of the Battle of Kepler 4042 spread throughout the galaxy like wildfire. The tale of how one human ship had turned the greatest military disaster in Federation history into the most decisive victory anyone could remember became the foundation of a new understanding between species. The galaxy had asked why. Humanity sent only one ship, and then they had watched that ship demonstrate the answer with plasma torpedoes and railgun fire. Now they knew that the question itself had been